You know this feeling. Your face gets hot, your chest tightens, and you want to disappear right now. Completely. A toddler feels it too. Same face, same posture, same desperate wish to vanish. And 34,000 years ago, a forager by a fire made a mistake, said the wrong thing, and felt the exact same thing. Heat in the face, the urge to hide, the wish to be somewhere else. 3 different people, 3 different eras, one identical feeling. This is not a coincidence. This is not a cultural accident. Something built this, and it runs the same in everyone. Tested across 15 societies, on 4 continents. The same shame, the same triggers. Why? That is what this video is about. Shame is not what you think it is. It's older. It's smarter, and it's switched on inside you on a schedule. When did humans start feeling shame? Not just as a species, but inside you personally. There are actually 2 answers. Answer 1, a fixed developmental clock. It switches on in every human child at the same age, regardless of culture, country, or parenting style. Answer 2, an evolutionary system built into the species over thousands of generations. By the time you were born, the wiring was already there. We're going to trace it. From the exact month it switches on in a baby's brain to why 15 societies across 4 continents feel it the same. Here's what we're going to figure out. Question 1. What turns shame on? Question 2. Why did it evolve at all? Question 3. What is it secretly protecting you from? By the end, you'll see shame completely differently. Not as a flaw, not as something your parents installed, but as one of the most sophisticated systems in the human brain. If you're new here, this channel is called Mnemos. We make videos about psychology, behavior, and what makes humans tick. If you're into that, consider subscribing. Now, let's get into it. One assumption you have about shame is about to fall apart. Starting here, most people think shame is something you learn from your parents, your culture, your religion. But what if that assumption is only half true? Let's find out. You felt shame. Everyone has. Maybe you dropped something in public. Everyone turned to look. And for one horrible second, you felt like the worst person alive. Not just embarrassed, ashamed. Your whole self on trial. That's what shame feels like. Different from guilt. Guilt says, I did a bad thing. Shame says, I am a bad thing. 2 completely different emotions with completely different consequences. Guilt makes you want to fix things. Shame makes you want to disappear. Researchers Michael Lewis and June Tangney spent decades documenting this distinction. It's one of the most replicated findings in emotion research. But here's what most people assume. Shame is learned behavior. Your parents scolded you. You learn to be ashamed. Different cultures have different shame triggers, so shame must be culturally variable, right? Well, sort of. Here's the puzzle. Ask a Nigerian farmer what he'd feel most ashamed of. Ask a Norwegian office worker the same question. You get different specific content. The exact acts that trigger shame differ, but the underlying structure is identical. Both men feel most ashamed of things that make their group devalue them. Not just embarrassed, genuinely ashamed. And the ranking of what's most shameful? Remarkably consistent across cultures. Not because they copied each other, but because the underlying calculator is the same. We'll come back to that calculator in Act 4. For now, let's just sit with this question. If shame were purely cultural, we'd expect wildly different responses across groups. We don't get that. We get convergence, which means something deeper is going on. But before we go there, let's go back even further to the very first moment shame appears inside a child. Inside you. When did you first feel shame? Can you even remember? Probably not. It was too early, but researchers can tell you exactly when it happened, because shame follows a biological timetable, like teeth coming in or language starting. It doesn't wait for culture. It doesn't wait for parenting. It runs on a clock, and that clock was ticking inside you, long before you knew any rules. So, when did shame first show up in you? The answer surprised researchers because it wasn't about rules at all. It was about mirrors. Specifically, what happens when a toddler sees one. But first, let's collect one more everyday scene. You're giving a presentation. Something goes wrong. People notice. And you feel that heat. The heat that wants to erase you. That is your ancient wiring speaking, not your childhood, not your parents. A system that's been running your species since before your ancestors had language. It's a social alarm system, and it was built for a world where being rejected by your group was not a metaphor for failure. It was death. That's the real story. And it starts with one key question. What has to exist in the mind before shame can switch on? The answer? A self. A concept of me that can be judged. Before you have a concept of self, you can feel discomfort, you can feel fear, but not shame. Because shame requires knowing there is a you to be humiliated. So the first key question is, when does self-awareness appear? The answer is the mirror test. And it's wild. Imagine a toddler, about 18 months old, holding a juice box. Utterly at peace. You put a mirror in front of them. For the first few months of life, a baby just looks at the mirror baby, like meeting a friend. The reflection is just another baby. Around 9 months, they start to notice patterns. When I move, it moves, but they don't get it yet. Then, somewhere between 15 and 24 months, something clicks. That's me. Researchers test this with a dot. They put a small red spot on the child's nose, without them noticing. Then they show the child a mirror. Younger babies just stare at the reflection. Older toddlers, the ones past the click, reach up and touch their own nose. Not the mirror's nose, their nose. Because they understand that reflection is me. This is called the Rouge test, or the mirror self-recognition test. It's been studied for decades in humans, chimpanzees, elephants, even some birds. And what the research shows is this. Self-recognition is the prerequisite. Before that click, children can feel basic emotions, joy, sadness, fear, anger, but not self-conscious emotions, because those require a self to be conscious of. After the click, 3 new emotions appear: embarrassment, envy, empathy. These are the first-generation self-conscious emotions. They don't need rule, they don't need judgment, just self-awareness. A toddler can be embarrassed when all eyes turn on them, even if they've done nothing wrong. That's pure self-consciousness. But shame? Not yet. Shame needs something more. The second step comes a bit later, and it changes everything. This is where the story gets interesting, because between 24 and 36 months, children start learning standards, rules, goals, expectations from their family, from their culture. And once those standards are internalized, shame can switch on, along with guilt and pride and hubris. Researcher Michael Lewis calls this the second generation, the evaluative self-conscious emotion. These are the ones that require judgment. Self plus standards plus evaluation. That's the formula. So the developmental timeline looks like this. Step 1, birth to about 15 months. Basic emotions only: joy, sadness, fear, anger. Step 2, 15 to 24 months. Self-recognition kicks in. First, self-conscious emotions appear. Step 3, 24 to 36 months. Standards, rules, and goals are internalized. True evaluative emotions switch on. Shame is here, on the same schedule, in every child, in every culture, regardless of parenting style. This was not expected. If shame were purely cultural, you'd expect wildly different timelines. Instead, it's a fixed window. 24 to 36 months. Every child, every culture, same window. The clock was there from the start. Let's see what it actually looks like. Imagine a toddler at 28 months. They know the rules. No running in the house. Be gentle with the cat. And then they break one. A glass of juice on the floor. Watch what happens. If shame is triggered, the child turns away from the mess, covers their face, wants to leave the room. Not because they want to hide the evidence, but because the self feels defective. I am the problem. That is shame. Now watch the guilt response. Same toddler, same spilled juice, different response. The child looks at the mess, looks at the adult, picks up the cup, maybe says sorry. That is guilt. Guilt focused on the act, on repair, on connection. Shame focused on the self, on hiding, on disappearing. Same event, same age, completely different emotional worlds. And this distinction, shame versus guilt, predicts very different life outcome. But that's for later. First, the species-level picture. So we've established the clock. Shame shows up at 24 to 36 months, after self-recognition, after standard learning. But we haven't explained the full mechanism yet. What exactly triggers shame once the wiring is in place? Here is the key: standards, rules, and goals. Michael Lewis calls them SRG. Once a child has internalized SRGs, they can evaluate themselves against them. And here's the critical part: the SRGs come from outside, from family, from culture, from community. But once internalized, they become your own internal judge. This is why shame feels so personal. It's your own standards judging you, not someone else's. This is also why shame is so culturally variable in content, but structurally identical across cultures. The content changes. The mechanism doesn't. This is a crucial distinction. Your culture decides what's shameful, but the shame system itself is built in. Hardware from biology, software from culture. The hardware is the same in everyone. Now, let's talk about what the hardware actually does. When you violate a standard you hold, and you believe others see it, the shame system activates immediately, automatically. You didn't decide to feel it. It happened to you. That's because it's a reflex, like blinking when something flies at your eye, or pulling your hand back from heat. Shame is a social reflex, triggered by perceived social threat. And here's the thing about reflexes: they're fast, automatic, hard to stop. You can suppress shame, you can manage it, but you cannot stop the first trigger, just like you can't stop the bling. This is why shame feels so primitive, because it is primitive in the evolutionary sense. Now let's look at the two very different outcomes when shame gets triggered in a growing child. Path 1, the shame-prone response. You feel shame, you hide, you don't repair, you don't communicate. The shame just festers. Path 2, shame triggers. You notice it, you convert it. From shame into guilt. I am bad becomes I did a bad thing. That tiny shift. Researcher June Tangney calls this the healthier path. Shame converted to repair-oriented guilt. Not shame elimination. You can't eliminate the reflex. You can learn what to do after it. That's a very different skill, but it's learnable. We'll come back to this in Act 6. For now, let's recap the developmental story. 0 to 15 months, basic emotions only. 15 to 24 months, self-recognition, first self-conscious emotions. 24 to 36 months, SRGs learned, evaluative emotions switch on. Shame is part of that package. Not the whole package, but it's in there from very early, and it's not going away. Now, here's the part where it gets strained. If shame is universal and it switches on at the same developmental moment, doesn't that mean it's not cultural? Or at least not only cultural? Yes, exactly. And this is where the evolutionary researchers come in, starting with a question: why would natural selection build shame in? What survival advantage does it give? To answer that, we need to leave the lab and visit a different kind of research across 15 small-scale traditional societies on 4 continents. This study changed everything. It revealed that shame isn't just about rule, it's about reputation. Your standing in your group. And it's the same calculation everywhere. That's the unlock. That's the piece that ties everything together. The developmental clock inside you and the universal calculator across all humans. 2 levels, 1 system. Let's go to the data, because the data is remarkable and a little bit eerie. In a good way. Ready? This is where the story goes global and where shame stops being personal and starts being biological. Act 4, the species level study. 15 societies, 4 continents, 1 answer. It's 2018. A group of researchers publishes a paper in PNAS. PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. One of the most rigorous peer-reviewed journals in the world. Lead author? Daniel Sneisser, along with colleagues from multiple universities. The paper? Cross-cultural invariances in the architecture of shame. The question they asked: is shame the same across radically different societies? Not in a vague, everyone gets embarrassed way, but structurally, architecturally. Does the underlying shame engine work the same everywhere? To find out, they went to 15 societies, not 15 weird countries. Weird is an acronym in psychology. Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. Most psychology research only uses weird samples. Sneisser's team went beyond that. Small-scale traditional societies across Africa, Asia, the Americas, Oceania, places where daily life looks nothing like a Western lab. Here's what they did. They presented participants with a list of behaviors: stealing from a neighbor, being caught lying, breaking a social obligation, failing at a skill the community values. They asked 2 questions about each behavior. Question 1. How much shame would you feel for this act? Question 2. How much would this make others devalue you? Those are 2 separate questions. Shame felt and social devaluation expected. If shame is culturally arbitrary, you'd expect no strong correlation. Shame would be about all sorts of different things, unconnected to how much others devalue you. Here's what they actually found. Across all 15 societies, the intensity of shame people imagined feeling tracked almost perfectly with how much the act would cause devaluation. High devaluation act, high shame. Low devaluation act, low shame. And this wasn't a weak correlation, it was remarkably strong across 15 different societies on 4 different continents. Wildly different cultures, histories, languages, religion. Call. Same shame architect. Call. What this means. Call. Shame is not a random cultural invention. Call. It's a system that calculates reputation. Call. It measures how badly a given act would damage your standing. Call. And it feels proportionally bad. Call. The bigger the reputational damage. Call. The more intense the shame. Call. Like a biological error signal. Call. This is your reputation. It's in danger. Pay attention. Schneisser and colleagues also looked at pride. Call. In a companion paper published the same year. Call. They found the same thing, but in reverse. Call. Pride tracks the acts that would make others value you more. Call. Shame and pride may be 2 sides of one coin. Call. A status tracking system calibrated to your group's values. This suggests something profound. Call. Shame isn't the opposite of pride. It's the same system, different direction. Now, a 2026 update. A more recent study suggests the architecture holds up further. Schneisser and Argaman. 6 countries: Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Japan, China, the United States. They found one more pattern. Shame intensity scales with the size of the failure and with its visibility. The more people who know about your failure, the worse the shame across all 6 countries. This reinforces the core finding of 2018. Shame is a reputational damage detector, built to respond to the magnitude of the threat. This is not what most people think shame is for. Most people think shame is about morality, about being a bad person. But the research says it's about standing, your social position, your value to your group. Morality enters only because, in most groups, most immoral acts lower your value. But the underlying logic is not moral, it's social. And this tells us something about why shame evolved. Which brings us to the question we've been circling. Quick, why did evolution build this in at all? Quick, what survival advantage did it give? Quick, the answer requires going back, way back. Quick, to small groups, dark night, and the terrifying reality of being alone. Act 5. Quick, the evolutionary theory. Picture a small band of foragers. Quick, somewhere between 15 and 50 people. Quick, living, hunting, gathering together. This was the dominant human social structure, quick, for hundreds of thousands of years. In this group, everyone knows everyone. Your reputation is transparent. There are no strangers. And your survival depends entirely on the group. Not partly, entirely. Food comes from collective hunting. Protection comes from numbers. Mates are within the group. Getting cast out, whether by exile or by the group slowly cutting you off, was often a death sentence. Not a metaphor. Literal death. No food, no shelter, no ally. This is the world shame evolved in. Researchers Lida Kosmides, John Tooby, and Daniel Schneitzer at the UC Santa Barbara Center for Evolutionary Psychology proposed that shame evolved as a reputational defense system. The theory holds, shame functions like an internal alarm for your reputation. When you do something that risks getting you devalued, shame fires before others fully process it. Like a pain signal fires before you fully think about the injury. The function, motivate you to hide the information or limit the reputational fallout before the damage spreads. This is researchers' interpretation, not observed history, but it's grounded in evolutionary logic and cross-cultural data, and it explains the physical symptoms. Why does shame make you want to hide your face? Because concealment limits the information spreading. Why does it make your body collapse inward? Because looking small signals non-threat to the group. Why does it make you want to leave the room? Because removing yourself stops more people from witnessing. Each physical component of shame has a social function. A second theory adds another layer. Researcher Daniel Fessler calls it the appeasement theory. The idea, shame displays are submission signals, like you see in social animals. When a lower status individual offends a higher status one, gaze aversion, hunched posture, going quiet, these diffuse aggression. They say, I submit. Don't escalate. Shame may function similarly in humans. Researchers frame these as complementary explanations, not competing. Both may be true, and both have one thing in common. They evolved in groups, for survival in groups, which makes perfect sense. If your life depends on staying in the group, you need a fast alarm for when you're at risk of being excluded. Shame is that alarm. Now, there's one more intriguing thread, and I want to be careful here because this is early evidence, not settled science. Some researchers have found a link between shame and disgust. Territzi and Shook, 2020, in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience. They found that disgust sensitivity, how easily someone feels disgust, correlated specifically with shame proneness, not guilt, specifically shame. And inducing disgust increased shame in disgust-sensitive people. Early evidence suggests these two systems may be linked. Why would disgust and shame be connected? One speculation: both systems protect social standing. Disgust keeps you away from contaminated things. Shame keeps you away from socially contaminating behavior. Two immune systems, one for the body, one for reputation. Interesting. Unconfirmed. Worth watching. Now, 4 myths. Let's clear them up. Myth 1. Shame is installed by parents. Partially true. Parents set the specific content, but the architecture is biological. The hardware was built before you met your parents. Myth 2. Shame is a modern Western emotion. 15 small-scale societies say otherwise. Myth 3. You can raise children without shame. You can raise children with healthy shame management, but the shame reflex itself will fire. It's wired in. Myth 4. Shame tells you who you are. Shame tells you about your standing in a social situation, not about your character, not about your worth as a person. That last myth is what Act 6 is about, because once you understand what shame is actually for, you can use that knowledge to stop treating it as a verdict and start treating it as information. There's a real difference. Let's go there now. You have a shame memory. You know the one. The moment where everything went wrong in front of everyone. Or maybe just in front of one person. That memory that still makes you flinch years later. Here's what that memory actually was. Your reputational alarm firing on a threat that your ancient wiring flagged as survival level, whether or not it actually was. This is important. Your wiring cannot tell the difference between being rejected by a 40-person forager band and being embarrassed in a presentation at work. Both feel like survival-level threats because, evolutionarily, they used to be the same thing. Your brain hasn't fully updated. 34,000 years is not that long in evolutionary time. The system was built for a world that no longer exists, but it still fires, on schedule, automatically. This is not your fault. It was not a character flaw. It was not a sign that something is broken in you. It was ancient hardware doing exactly what it evolved to do. Now, what can you do with that? Step 1. Recognize the alarm for what it is. When you feel that flush of shame, notice it. Don't immediately believe its verdict. It's an alarm, not a jury. Alarms go off in smoke-filled rooms and in rooms with burnt toast. The alarm is the same. What triggered it matters. Step 2. Ask what the alarm is actually about. Is it about real reputational damage? Or is it about something your prehistoric brain overcounted? In many everyday situations, it overcounts. The consequences aren't survival level, but the alarm fires as if they are. Step 3. Use guilt, not shame. If something actually went wrong, shift from I am bad to I did a bad thing. That shift is not letting yourself off the hook. It's switching to a more useful emotion. Guilt can repair. Shame can only hide. And hiding doesn't fix anything. But the research backs this up. June Tangney's decades of work show shame-prone people hide more, repair less, apologize less effectively. Guilt-prone people repair more, connect better, grow faster. Got the emotion that feels more punishing, shame. Got actually produces worse outcomes. Got the emotion that feels smaller, guilt. Got is actually more functional. Got this is not obvious. It surprises most people. Got now, one more reframe. Got your worst shame memory. Got the one that still makes you cringe. Got was your social alarm doing its job. Loudly, urgently, as designed. Got it was not a report on your character. Got it was a warning signal about perceived social standing in a moment that felt threatening. That's all it was. And now you know why it felt so intense. Because it evolved for a world where that intensity was justified. Understanding that doesn't erase the memory, but it can change your relationship to it. From, this proves something terrible about me, to, my alarm went off. Now what can I actually do? That reframe takes practice, and it's not available in the moment the alarm fires, but it becomes available afterward, when the reflex settles. That window, between the reflex and the story you tell about yourself, is where the work happens. Shame is not your enemy. It's an ancient system, built by evolution, calibrated by your culture, designed to protect your place in the group. It just sometimes overcounts in the modern world. Knowing that, really knowing it, changes something. Not everything, not immediately, but something real. Let's bring it all together. Here's what we've learned. When did humans start feeling shame? There are two answers. Answer one, inside every individual. 24 to 36 months after self-recognition. After learning your family's standard, the same clock in every child, no exception. Answer 2. Inside the species, likely evolved in small foraging bands, where reputation meant survival, as a reputational defense alarm, verified across 15 societies on 4 continents. Shame is not a bug, it's a feature, a very old, very precise, very universal feature that evolved to protect your standing in a group. And it's running in you right now, on the same architecture as 15 societies across 4 continents, as the toddler in the mirror, as the forager by the fire, the same hardware in all of you. Now you know why. One last question. If shame is an alarm built for a 40-person forager band, what does that mean for living in a world with billions of people, where one mistake can go viral, where strangers can devalue you instantly, where the audience is not 40 people? That's the question we haven't answered yet, and it's one of the most important questions in modern psychology. We might make a video about that. But first, if this video helped you understand yourself a little better, subscribe to Mnemos. We make videos about psychology, behavior, and what makes humans tick, designed to make you understand people, including yourself. See you in the next one.